The emergency landing was less of a soft touchdown and more of a catastrophic crumbling into the red sand of Kepler 186f, a colony planet humanity had affectionately and inaccurately dubbed Dustbowl. Princess Selene of the Lumarian stellar dynasty, accustomed to the silent glide of gravity repulsion technology, was violently thrown against the restraint field of her private escape pod. The impact stunned her, rattling the crystalline structures that formed her very armor. Her civilization, the Lumaris, had achieved a kind of cold perfection, viewing emotions as inefficient energy waste and viewing humanity as primitive, chaotic dirt dwellers. Selene herself was the product of generations of genetic refinement, engineered for grace, intellect, and political sterility. Yet here she was, marooned on a human world, hunted by the political rivals who sought to prevent her ascension to the throne. Her only working technology was a suit that, while offering some protection, screened her position to any high-tech sensor sweep. She needed to disappear. Fast. The airlock hissed open, spitting out a plume of thick, iron-rich dust. Selene stepped out, her movements stiff, surveying the endless, rust-colored canyon landscape. The light from the distant, pale red sun was blinding, and the air was hot, caustic, and thin. Her suit's internal database confirmed the worst. A high-powered Lumarian tracking vessel would reach this quadrant in less than 5 solar hours. She activated her low-frequency distress beacon, but before it could cycle, a shadow fell over her. Not a ship, but a crude, battered rover, barely held together by rust and sheer will, grinding its way up the dune. It stopped, kicking up a final, choking cloud of dust. From the driver's seat, a young man, barely old enough to shave and wearing patched, sweat-stained synth leather, peered out from behind scratched goggles. This was Matthew. He was a scavenging prospector, one of the many forgotten souls who lived on the extreme fringes of the colonized zones, living off salvage and luck. He looked messy, inefficient, and utterly unrefined. In short, everything the Lumarians despised. "Well, hello there," Matthew drawled, his voice thick with the Dustbowl accent, a mixture of amusement and suspicion. He immediately recognized the sheer value of her wrecked pod. "That's a hell of a fender bender. You got insurance, Your Highness?" Selene, ignoring his casual disrespect, adopted the rigid posture of her rank. "I am Princess Selene. I require immediate, private transport to the nearest functioning jump gate. I will compensate you with enough currency to purchase your planet, if necessary." Matthew pushed his goggles up, revealing eyes the color of the pale red dust around them. He laughed, a short, sharp, entirely unnecessary human sound. "My planet? Sweet. But right now, a functioning fuel cell is worth more than all your credits. And I don't take orders from walking glow sticks." His irreverence was shocking. Selene's calculated response systems froze for a moment. Her society would execute him for that tone. The situation became instantly critical when 3 sleek, predatory Lumarian pursuit drones crested the canyon ridge, their energy signatures screaming across the quiet landscape. Selene knew the drones would home in on her suit's power core. She didn't hesitate. She deactivated her suit, plunging herself into the immediate danger of the environment. The protective crystalline armor dulled, and the heat immediately began to seep into her. "They are tracking me," she hissed. "They are high-frequency sensitive. We must move without a signature." Matthew didn't need further explanation. He had survived the Dustbowl for a decade by thinking only one step ahead of disaster. "Get in," he commanded, gesturing to the passenger seat of the rover, which was less a seat and more a pile of torn cushioning and wiring. "My old rig is too noisy and too dirty for their fancy sensors. It's got no digital footprint. It's a ghost to them." Selene reluctantly climbed in. The interior was a shocking display of human comfort and disorder: empty food wrappers, discarded tools, and the pervasive, chemical metallic smell of human sweat. As Matthew slammed the manual door shut, she felt a profound wave of disgust, instantly tempered by the realization that this filthy, noisy human contraption was her only chance. They lurched forward, the engine protesting loudly, bouncing violently over the terrain. Matthew drove with an almost instinctive grace, navigating dust plumes and canyons with practiced ease. Selene, who had only ever traveled in automated vehicles, found the randomness of his steering unsettling. He wasn't following a program, he was following instinct, reading the air and the ground like an animal. "Why do you not use the autopilot?" she demanded, grabbing a dangling strap for balance. Matthew grinned, the dust etching lines into his face. "Autopilot stops when it sees trouble. I speed up." It was then, trapped in the vibrating chaos of his rover, that Selene began to truly observe him. Her advanced Lumarian education had taught her that human construction was weak, but his rover was a testament to persistent, improvisational repair. Wires were twisted together and covered with rough, human-made tape. Patches were riveted over holes. It was a monument to human resilience, the refusal to let technology's failure be a final limit. Later, when they had to stop to bypass a sensor grid by climbing a ridge, Selene watched Matthew work. He didn't use sophisticated climbing gear, he used ropes, knots, and sheer physical effort. Her own enhanced strength made the ascent easy, but his perseverance, the pure, raw energy he expended to achieve a simple, necessary task, was fascinating. He didn't complain about the inefficiency of it all, he simply did it. "Why do you struggle so?" she asked, genuinely confused as he hauled himself over a difficult ledge. "Your efforts are wildly disproportionate to the mechanical output." Matthew wiped dust and sweat from his face. "We call that elbow grease, princess. It's inefficient, yeah. But it's ours. We can always make more of it when the tech breaks." They survived the night huddled in a shallow cave. Selene, cold and unnerved, watched Matthew start a small fire with scavenged fuel and flint, a completely analog process that bypassed all her Lumarian fire suppression and tracking systems. It was an act of survival, stripped down to its most basic, beautiful form. As the heat of the fire touched her, melting the cold logic of her civilization, she finally spoke to him, not as a princess, but as a student. "Your species, it is built on chaos. Everything is repaired, not replaced. You use emotion where logic should suffice. You rely on sheer will rather than optimal programming." "Why?" Matthew looked up at her, the firelight catching the earnest intensity of his eyes. "Because we know the code will always crash, Selene. The big, shiny ships always break down. Out here, when everything fails, the only thing that works is the person next to you. And my will? It's fueled by knowing I can always find a way. It's called adaptability." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, metallic object, offering it to her. It was a piece of cheap, human candy, wrapped in crinkled foil. "Have a chocolate bar. It'll boost your morale. Inefficient, maybe, but damn effective." Selene took the candy, the first she had ever seen. She unwrapped it, the crude sugar smell overwhelming her refined senses. She ate it slowly, a sudden, powerful surge of pure, unnecessary pleasure rushing through her, an emotion she had never been programmed to feel. She looked at Matthew, the dusty, resourceful, chaotic human who saw her not as a sovereign or a political prize, but as someone who just needed to get somewhere. His strength was not in his technology, but in his utter humanity. He was the antithesis of her perfect, cold world, and he was the only reason she was alive. As dawn broke, they finally reached the edge of the Dustbowl's main settlement, a filthy, sprawling spaceport that looked like a junk heap from space but was the single safest place on the planet for her to hide and eventually call for loyalist help. Before she stepped out to face the next stage of her journey, she turned to Matthew. The crystalline light that now pulsed on her skin was no longer the formal lilac, but a warm, slow-burning orange, the Lumarian color for profound, unexpected admiration. "Matthew," she said, using the human name easily. "Your adaptability is the most terrifying and magnificent force I have ever encountered." She kissed him quickly, a swift, unexpected burst of human emotion, and then, without another word, she stepped out of the rover, ready to use her newfound, messy human resilience to reclaim her throne.